Okay, picture this. A patient's heart stops beating. 5 minutes go by, and a doctor calls the time of death. Legally, biologically, that person is gone. But then, a surgical team rushes in. They clamp off their arteries to the brain, and they restart the heart. And it begins to beat again, inside a body that was just declared dead. No, this isn't some sci-fi movie. This is a real medical procedure, and it is sparking an absolute ethical civil war.
So that's the big question, right? Should you restart a dead person's heart just to save someone else? This is the dilemma at the center of a procedure called Normothermic Regional Perfusion, or NRP. It's a technology that's already saving thousands of lives, but it's also forcing all of us to ask a deeply, deeply uncomfortable question. What does it actually mean to be dead?
So how in the world does this even work? Well, it's basically a 4-step process that just pushes the boundaries of what we consider final. First, death is declared in the usual way. Then the surgeons move in and surgically isolate the brain. After that, a machine takes over, restoring blood flow to the rest of the body. And here's the wild part. The heart, now getting warm, oxygenated blood, often just starts beating all on its own. So what you have is this reanimated heart inside a body whose brain is, for all intents and purposes, dead. Now, to really get why this is causing such an uproar, we need to talk about the one sacred rule that governs every single organ transplant out there. It's called the dead donor rule, and for decades, it's been the absolute bedrock of the entire system. The dead donor rule is incredibly simple, and honestly, that's its power. It really boils down to 2 things. First, you have to be dead, officially declared dead before anyone can take your organs. And second, and this is crucial, taking those organs can't be the thing that kills you. And as you can imagine, a procedure like NRP seems to be tiptoeing right on the edge of both of those principles, which is exactly why the debate is so fierce. See, for years, there have really only been 2 ways to become an organ donor. The first is brain death. That's where the brain is completely and totally gone, but a ventilator keeps the heart pumping. Those organs are perfect for transplant. The second way is circulatory death, where the heart stops for good. The huge problem there is that once the blood stops flowing, the organs start to get damaged almost immediately. And for decades, this meant that thousands upon thousands of perfectly good hearts were tragically lost. And that right there, that's the exact problem NRP was invented to fix. It's a genius, if controversial, way to take a circulatory death donor and, after they're legally dead, restart their heart to keep their organs in pristine condition, making them just as good as organs from a brain-dead donor. So let's zoom in on that critical step. After circulatory death is officially called, surgeons clamp the big arteries leading to the brain. This is the most important and honestly the most controversial part of the whole thing. The goal is to lock in the brain's death, to make absolutely sure it can't be revived. Then, a machine called ECMO, which is basically an artificial heart and lungs, gets hooked up and starts pumping oxygenated blood to all the other organs. That's what allows the heart to start beating again, keeping everything else ready for transplant. Which, of course, brings us right back to that massive, mind-bending question. If you declare someone dead because their heart and circulation stopped, but then you restart their circulation, were they really dead in the first place? And the answer? Well, it all comes down to a really subtle but frankly explosive shift in legal language. And here it is. This is the legal loophole that makes this whole thing possible. For the longest time, the law defined death as the irreversible stop of function. Irreversible is a biological fact. It means it cannot be undone, period. But that definition has slowly shifted to the word permanent. Permanent is a clinical decision. It just means that we will not undo it. So even if you could technically restart the heart with a machine, the moment doctors decide they won't, that person's state is considered permanent. It's a profound shift. Death becomes less of a biological event and more of a medical decision. And this one little word change, it has ignited an absolute ethical civil war inside the medical community. You've got these 2 camps, both with very strong arguments, who are just fiercely at odds. On one side, you have the pragmatists who are focused on saving lives, and on the other, you have the purists who are trying to protect the very definition of death itself. And you can see why one side is pushing so hard for this. Just look at the numbers. They don't lie. This procedure increases the number of available donor hearts by 20 to 30%. For the thousands and thousands of people on a waiting list, that's not just a statistic. That's the difference between life and death. That's hope. And this lays out the 2 sides perfectly. You've got the utilitarians, mostly surgeons and their patients, who say, look, the brain is the person. If the brain is gone for good, the body's just a vessel, carrying organs that can save someone else. But then the essentialists, bioethicists, some doctors, they come back with this really chilling point. If you have to physically clamp the arteries to stop the brain from waking up when you restart the heart, then was that person really, truly 100% dead yet? And this right here, this is what keeps the essentialists up at night. Their argument isn't just some philosophical debate, it's intensely practical. They're terrified that if public trust is broken, if people even get a hint of the idea that doctors are killing people for their organs, the whole organ donation system could completely collapse overnight. And then there's this other kind of creepy issue. They call it the sensory problem. Now, studies show that the clamps are really, really effective at stopping blood flow to the brain. But what if a tiny, minuscule amount gets through? Could a donor perceive anything at all? It's scientifically very unlikely, but for a lot of critics, minimal blood flow is not the same as zero blood flow, and that tiny gap is where a whole lot of doubt lives. So what are we supposed to make of all this? Where does it leave us? Is NRP this incredible medical miracle or a profound moral mistake? The truth is, what we might be witnessing is just the next, very difficult step in the evolution of how we, as a society, define death. You know, it's funny. We think of death as this fixed, absolute thing. But it's not. It's always been changing with our technology. For centuries, it was simple. No breath, no pulse, you're gone. Then, in 1968, the ventilator came along and forced us to literally invent the concept of brain death. And today, machines like ECMO are pushing us toward this new brain-centric definition, where the brain is the person and the heart is just another part, a pump that can be replaced. But you know what? This entire agonizing debate, it might just become irrelevant sooner than we think. There's another technology coming up on the horizon that could change the entire game: xenotransplantation. In plain English, that's the science of using genetically modified animal organs, like hearts from pigs, and transplanting them into humans. And just think about how this could end the whole argument. If we can grow organs at a lab or use them from animals, the organ shortage could disappear. We wouldn't need human donors anymore. We wouldn't have to navigate these incredibly complex, ethically murky situations at the end of someone's life. We could finally move from a system that relies on human tragedy to one that relies purely on science. But that day isn't here yet. And until it is, we're left with this profound question. And it's not just a question for doctors or philosophers, it's for all of us. When you put it all on the table, what do you value more? Protecting the absolute sanctity of the moment of death, or taking a chance to save a life that is very much still being lived? There are no easy answers here.